It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by CG Technology Sportsbook.
Money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Presented by WagerTalk.com.
And here we go, the Thursday edition of the Las Vegas Sportsline here on ESPN Las Vegas. Online, LVSportsNetwork.com. Ari Platinum produces our program. Ralph Michaels from WagerTalk is here. I'm Dave Cokin, and it's Thursday. That means it's CG Technologies Thursday. And joining us, one of their key people, risk analyst, and a guy who knows what's going on both sides of the counter. You can follow him on Twitter at the Moneyline Guy, and that's Will Bernanke. What's going on, Will? How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Dave. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, except for a loser on the Indians to start the day, but you're not going to win them all.
Plenty of fun left.
And by the way, Jose Ramirez is a bum, okay? He just is. He's a bum. He didn't run out of pop-up today, and it turned into a double play. Can't stand guys who do that. So I get to call him a bum because he acted like one. So let's start with the NFL. Football season it's heating up. Hard Knocks will be on in just a handful of weeks, I guess, once they get to training camp, and a lot of excitement here in Las Vegas. And the NFL season is kind of underway with the futures that are up. And I want to talk about who's hot and who's not as far as where the bettors are at this point.
Yeah, it's the Browns are in the news every day.
Oh, boy.
And what's that cliche? Any publicity is good publicity, and that's certainly been the case for us as far as a handle when it comes to the Browns. And right now, they're our biggest liability to win the AFC, and the second biggest to win the AFC North, which this is a surprise considering who the team that's favored right now, not favored, but the most money on to win the AFC North is the Bengals. So the Browns and Bengals, and who would have thought that? If I'd have told you that a few months ago, you'd have said I need my head examined.
Well, not so much on the Browns, but I'll admit I'm surprised on the Bengals. Do you think a lot of that has to do with Marvin Lewis just not being the coach anymore and maybe people believing they'll just be improved because of that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of Marvin Lewis, Sean McVay being the hot coach, and an assistant of his coming on is also, I think, plays into it. They figure that, there's going to be some of that rubbing off on the Bengals. And also the division being a little more vulnerable, these teams, Baltimore and Pittsburgh having their own issues. So I think it's just kind of a perfect storm for that to happen.
Will, I know. Sorry, Will.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, when you talked about the Bengals and the Browns, we know you've got a lot of action on the Browns. Is it the Bengals you've had a good number of tickets for a good amount of money, or is it a few guys put a lot of money on thinking they're Bengals fans and they want to get one of these big hits that have been floating around?
It's a combination. There's been sharp money on the Bengals, but also some public money coming in. I think a lot of fans are just, in a sense, relieved that they have a new coach, maybe some new hope there, considering they've been kind of stuck in the mud for so long.
And, back on the Browns, the fact that Baker Mayfield doesn't go a day without making some kind of headlines. This time, the latest one, taking a rip at Texas, his old rival in college when he was at Oklahoma, and at the Texas quarterback. It's got nothing to do with the Browns, but I think it keeps them center stage and in people's minds and eyes, and that just keeps the action increasing.
Yeah, there's no question. The Browns have it. They have it made as far as being in the news every single day, and that affects handle. I mean, the world we live in, social media, Twitter, Instagram. If the Browns are right in your face every day, people are going to tend to just bet them, for sake of familiarity.
Are there any teams that have just gotten hardly any action at all, being to win the division or win the AFC?
Yeah, just all teams that are in the other conference, NFC as well. There hasn't been many Giant tickets written. There hasn't been many Bills tickets written. Believe it or not, the Dolphins have seen a few tickets written. I just thought I'd bring that up as a surprise, just because of how high their price is to win that division.
I think you might make money on that one.
Yeah, I think so. The other one was the Redskins. I think people are just kind of wait and see with their quarterback. But I just wanted to throw in, too, a top 5 liabilities to win it all.
Okay.
There's some teams in here that I thought were a little surprising. The Bears, Jaguars, Cowboys, Raiders, and the Browns, in no particular order. So just those are right now our top 5.
And you know what? You can see all 5. The Browns, for the reasons we talked about. The Raiders, because they have a lot of interest out here. And
The local money?
I think the local money is involved there. The Bears, because they always get money. I mean, it doesn't matter whether Chicago's good, bad, or indifferent. Well, they always draw future action. It doesn't matter what the sport is either. Blackhawks, Cubs, well, maybe not the Bulls anymore, but Bears certainly. I don't know that there's ever been a year that I can recall where the books didn't go into the season without some kind of a liability on the Bears. And I think you can say the same for the Cowboys.
Yeah, those two teams, you can certainly use that to your advantage, knowing that ahead of time and price them accordingly, so you don't have to really give out a big price on them. And bettors will, you want to give out a fair price, but you certainly can shade it.
Switching over to the NBA, and of course the big news, AD getting traded to the Lakers. You obviously made adjustments on your lines as soon as that happened. Did the customers come in shortly thereafter and put money on the Lakers?
They sure did. As much money as we've got on the Lakers, they're our second biggest liability right now to win it all. And speaking of trades, the Jazz are our biggest liability with their acquisition of Mike Conley.
Big pickup. Big pickup.
Good guard combo.
Yeah.
One of the best guard combos in the NBA right now.
I think there should be an over-under on how many games these guys play, Conley and Anthony Davis. Will they be, will they go through the season healthy this year? That's the question. I think, if they're both healthy, then these teams certainly could make some noise, but, history has said otherwise. But yeah, bettors.
Go ahead, Will.
I was going to say that, with the Utah Jazz, we got some money at 34-1 and at 30-1, and now we're down to 24-1.
I think the toughest team, or teams, I should say, for you guys to hang numbers on right now would be the Clippers and the Raptors, because it looks like Kawhi Leonard will play with one of those two teams. I think the Clippers are probably the favorite to get him. And you've got to anticipate this move and kind of adjust on air. Is that right?
Yeah, we're playing it pretty conservative now with Raptors and Clippers. You don't want to give out too much here, but also don't want to make them ridiculously low. So Toronto being 12-1, the Clippers at 6-1 is not too bad, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll adjust accordingly and certainly keep out a fair price.
You know what's interesting to me, and look, I could be dead wrong on this, but as the rosters are comprised right now, without knowing what the Lakers are going to do with that $22 million they've got to spend, which I assume they'll spend on some depth, if you add Leonard to the Clippers, I think the Clippers are better than the Lakers. And that, to me, would indicate bad value on the Lakers, which I think is actually clearly the case, and maybe some really good value on the Clippers, who, to me, I don't know. If they get Leonard, I think they're more like 5-1. I think they might be the team to beat in the West.
Oh, there's no question. The Clippers were, they made a lot of strides last year,
Yes.
and add Kawhi to the mix, and arguably he'd have a comparable supporting cast with the Clippers than he did in Toronto. I mean, that's easy to, before the playoff, if you compared both rosters, you'd say they're pretty similar. So you give them a fighting chance. Next year's going to be a tremendous year for the futures market in the NBA because it's so wide open. It's going to be a great way. It's going to be a lot of fun to price this and to see what bettors do and to adjust, with all the moves that are going to be made this offseason.
Now, I think the answer to this is probably no, but I'll ask it anyway. The assumption is it's an automatic. Zion Williamson's going to be the first pick tonight. Are there any teams that you think might get adjusted as far as their future book's concerned off what happens tonight, or is it basically going to be inconsequential?
I think it's going to be fairly inconsequential unless there's a big trade.
Right.
That'd be the only thing I could see changing anything, and it wouldn't shock me if the Knicks made a trade to someone, for a big-time player, and they trade their pick, and it becomes, R.J. Barrett, and he goes to a fairly good team, and, something like that, but nothing catastrophic.
For years, Golden State has been the favorite in the West, and the East has a bunch of groups. Are we now going to see a complete opposite with Milwaukee being the leader in the East? I mean, if Boston loses Kyrie and like they're talking and the East is so wide open, is Milwaukee going to be the significant favorite to win the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, especially if Kawhi leaves.
Yeah.
Milwaukee would be a clear-cut favorite, to win the East. And we'll see what the 76ers do as well with Embiid and Simmons if they both stay. I mean, you think they will, but you never know after last year. So, but the Bucs should be the favorite. I mean, they really didn't do anything wrong. They had a really great year. Yeah, they were favored to win the Eastern Conference Finals, but when you've never been in that spot before, we've seen it many times. Teams have to pay their dues, and they learn from their mistakes.
This is our CG Thursday edition, CG Sportsbooks throughout Las Vegas. Great locations in some of the nicest spots you'll find around town. Will Bernanke, risk analyst for CG, with us, and it's time for us to go behind the counter on the Thursday games in Major League Baseball. A couple of games are, one done and one in progress. The Rockies leading the Diamondbacks 2-1 in the top of the fourth inning. They have a man at second and 2 outs. Trevor Story, by the way, onto the IL with a thumb injury that he suffered diving into his headfirst dive into second base last night. So that didn't exactly work out for the Rockies, even though they won the game. In the books, the Indians have lost to the Rangers 4-2 earlier today. Tonight's games, the Phillies and Nationals, and I don't know. I'm not overly surprised by this. The Nationals are starting to show some life, but the betting, it appears, is on Philadelphia tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been all Philly money today. In fact, a few minutes before I even set up to talk with you guys, there was another big bet that came in on the Phillies. So it looks like bettors are just, the anti-sweep thing or whatever you want to call it. They're on Philly, and they're backing the guy who's pitching. It's Pivetta.
Pivetta against and former UNLV star Eric Fetty on the mound for the Nationals.
Yes, that's correct. And it looks like Washington will go up as an underdog here, so looks like we'll need the Nats tonight.
Well, the St. Louis Cardinals are hitting .212 over the last 20 days, yet they continued to get priced like they're a winning team. I mean, they're one game over 500 now. They're laying a big number again with Adam Wainwright on the mound against the Marlins. Tell us about action in that game.
Yeah, this low-volume game, and I kind of figured that. The Marlins won the other day, and then St. Louis came back with a walk-off last night. It wasn't impressive, but a win's a win. But right now, it's a few more dollars on St. Louis. But conventional wisdom would lead me to say we'll probably need Miami come 5:15.
I'm going to speculate that this next game, you got to be getting over action, I would think. The Mets and Cubs, not exactly the pitching duel of the century in this one.
Yeah, exactly. It's a few more dollars on the over. Bettors, a lot of times with these Cub games lately, they're waiting the last second to make sure that wind is at least, if it's not blowing out, at least it's not blowing in.
Yep.
So that's holding back a few bucks there. But most of the money, it's actually been good two-way action thus far. We've seen two-way action. Bettors feel nervous to back Chatwood, and the Mets are going with another no-name who probably had a 9 ERA in AAA. So we'll see what happens there.
The Cincinnati Reds are 1-14 over/under their last 15 games.
Wow.
Averaging 3.2 runs per game.
Which means they can't hit, and they're getting good pitching.
Absolutely. Their number, I went back through June 1st, they're number 2 in ERA, and they're number 29 in offense. So that's the combination to get you 1-14. Have people jumped on that bandwagon for this Reds-Brewers game tonight?
A few more dollars on the under, but nothing crazy yet. First 5 also, we saw a few more dollars coming on the under. But I was surprised to see, as far as the game, that bettors are back in Milwaukee here, considering the swoon they've been in, and the Reds have been really playing much better baseball. Forget about the hitting with Cincinnati. Just the fact that they're doing things they hadn't done in years, which is pitch well and actually, catch the ball. So I'm a little surprised to see that they're back in Milwaukee, and again, we may need the Reds here.
What's interesting there is that the Brewers just lost 3 straight at San Diego. The Reds just swept the Astros. But the Reds still barely scored in that game, and it's not like, the Brewers didn't exactly get shut down in San Diego. They just had a bad time pitching. This is a tough game, and we're going to talk more about it later on. But, Jimmy Nelson's been really bad out of the gate for the Brewers since coming off the injury. But I think there's some betting theory that would suggest, third start back off the DL, now it's time for him to start pitching like Jimmy Nelson. So maybe that's what's some of the support from Milwaukee is from.
Yeah, that's good point there. It's a divisional game, so, you would think Milwaukee be a little more focused on the little things, because certainly in San Diego they made a number of mental mistakes from what I saw.
Yes, they did not play well. This is an interesting game tonight. The Giants and Dodgers, look, it's always interesting because it's a great rivalry. But what adds to it is that conventional wisdom would suggest that this will be the last game that Madison Bumgarner ever starts as a San Francisco Giant against the Dodgers. They don't meet again until